Tonight in 9 News, our youngest victim, a 15-year-old girl, dies with COVID as health chiefs admit cases haven't plateaued. Frustrated families hit out at plans to allow Sydney-siders into Victoria before we can even gather. A COVID survivor tells how he was at death's door amid a vaccine blitz in Melbourne's southeast. Australia's largest onshore heroin haul smuggled into Melbourne in a container full of tiles. A veteran British MP stabbed to death while meeting voters in a church. And Peter Moody shares the love as Incentivise surges home in the Caulfield Cup.
This is Melbourne's 9 News with Alicia Loxley.
Good evening. A 15-year-old girl has become Victoria's youngest COVID death, the state's toll growing by another 7 people. Today's big infection number has forced health officials to admit the curve hasn't flattened as we edge closer to 70% double dosed. Stephanie Anderson begins our coverage.
As the state's COVID count increased by just shy of 2,000 cases, the response commander confirmed Victoria has lost its youngest victim.
Very sad to confirm that a 15-year-old has very sadly passed away. We believe with a number of conditions, but she was COVID positive.
The teenager is one of 7 positive patients who died in the past 24 hours, while those in hospital increased by 103 to 798. 163 people now need intensive care and 106 of them are relying on a machine to breathe. The flow-on effect, according to health chiefs, of spiking cases we've been battling for weeks.
We also know that the peak of hospital admissions and complex cases is well into November and December.
They're the numbers driving authorities to take a slow and steady approach, but the man in charge of the nation's books is turning up the pressure for more freedom.
It's time Victoria shifted gears and got back in the fast lane.
That should happen in April when the Grand Prix returns to Albert Park starting on the 7th.
And he's making good progress.
But for now, the track is still for testing and the focus still on the stats.
We felt increasingly that we might be at a plateau. Clearly we weren't at a plateau now.
What is plateauing are protesters, far outnumbered by police in Brunswick.
There's lots of police patrols happening here in the park here.
They want freedom and no mandatory jabs, but that first shot deadline for authorised workers has now passed.
They should have been bringing people with them rather than just pushing them into a corner.
Only yesterday, over 500 site inspections were undertaken. Yeah, we're not going to back away from this. There will be significant enforcement effort.
Nearly 100,000 more doses have been delivered, so 88% of Victorians have now had their first jab, 65 their second, inching us closer to the 70% trigger. But how and when we'll get a little more room to move were questions the COVID commander couldn't answer as he flew solo today.
The fact you've got the short straw today is something you'll have to live with.
And Steph, when should we get that roadmap announcement?
Tomorrow, Alicia, I understand that the Premier will be front and centre at that daily press conference to outline when and what will change when we reach that 70% double dose trigger. Now, under the roadmap, we were expected to get there around October 26, but some data analysts crunching the numbers say we could do it as soon as October 21. We are expecting the Premier to lock in a date tomorrow to give businesses and Victorians a bit of certainty on what's ahead. And we know under the roadmap, on the list of freedoms expected are things like outdoor dining, a haircut and also bigger groups at picnics for the fully vaccinated. As for whether the announcement goes further and includes things like visitors to your home, well, they're the details we'll all be watching for tomorrow, Alicia.
We shall see. OK, Steph Anderson, thank you. Melburnians separated from their families are furious with plans to let in people from Sydney before loved ones can be reunited locally. And as Adam Hegarty tells us, there are now calls to remove travel limits sooner.
Sometimes living life by the rules feels like starring in a comedy.
Can't do much as per usual, just work.
Tanya lives in Officer, her sister, less than an hour away in St Kilda. Too far apart and barred from meeting, they FaceTime.
That's right. We're compliant.
Normally, if they don't laugh, they'll cry, but the mantra's worn thin.
No, enough. We need to stop this now. It's just ludicrous, absolutely ludicrous.
From Tuesday, someone 900 kilometres away in Sydney can fly here if they're double vaxxed and test negative, while Victorians need to wait another 2 weeks before we can move more than 25 kilometres in our own state. Inverloch publican Dylan wants patrons from Melbourne.
I just think it's lacking sort of any sense, to be honest, so yeah.
While Melburnian Susan McBean wants to see her parents in Swan Hill. The border announcement wasn't music to their ears, it was tone deaf.
It's just ridiculous, insane, unfair. I think it's a real kick in the teeth, personally.
The state government hitting back, saying it's thinking ahead and travel bubble rules keep everyone safe.
We're clutching at straws really to find some quite extreme examples of what people may or may not want to go and do. If people from New South Wales choose to come to Melbourne, they are caught by the same restrictions and constraints that all of us have here in Melbourne.
But it's still fallen flat. Because for many, it's the principle. After so long in lockdown, Victorians want to be thought of before anyone from New South Wales. And their demand tonight is simple: scrap local travel restrictions sooner.
We've been advocating from the start that at 70%, we should mimic where New South Wales are.
Victorians are scratching their heads, saying, why not us? Why can't we get these same freedoms as the people of New South Wales?
Adam Hegarty, 9 News.
Residents in Melbourne's southeast are being encouraged to urgently roll up their sleeves as COVID transmission surges. A young man who caught the virus just before getting his shots has told of how close he came to dying from COVID. Medical reporter Emily Rice.
3 generations of the 17-strong Patel family went to the Casey Fields pop-up clinic this morning to get their COVID shots together.
We really need it because our kids is very small and we need to look after every single person.
The Cranbourne East facility, set up until tomorrow night within an indoor football ground, makes immunisation more accessible for residents in the area.
It's amazing because it's been only 9 kilometres away from my home. Last time for my first dose I went all the way to Melbourne CBD, Melbourne Museum. So I think for people like us, it's amazing actually.
Convenience is critical given rising infections in the southeast. The health department says much of the spread is household to household transmission.
1,863 active cases right now in the Casey LGA area.
Most of today's new infections, 642, were in the west, but the southeast is close behind with 602. Daily cases in the northern suburbs have fallen to 457 and there were 111 in the east.
And really I'd urge people, if you're in the southeast, just recognise the level of COVID infections that we're seeing around here, and please, if you haven't been vaccinated yet, please get that done.
While just over half of Casey's residents are double vaxxed, the rate falls to 48% in the neighbouring Greater Dandenong Council area. In the city of Melbourne, the rate dips to 47%, and further north in Hume, less than half of the population, 48%, are fully vaccinated. Werribee tradie Aaron is proof COVID is not just an old person's disease. 2 days after testing positive, the father of 2 ended up in Geelong Hospital in a coma for 8 days.
I'm 38 years old and I was knocking on death's door, so if you think it's not real, it is.
Even once out of ICU, he had to relearn basic skills again.
Walking, feeding myself, just having a simple drink out of a straw and a cup of water. I couldn't even do those things.
Aaron had booked in his COVID vaccination but caught the virus just a few days before his appointment. And after what he's been through, he's urging others who aren't yet immunised to do so quickly.
100%. If I had been vaccinated, I may have only got flu-like symptoms and a cough.
And this COVID survivor has nothing but praise for Barwon Health's frontline staff.
Without you, I wouldn't be here today.
Emily Rice, 9 News.
A sigh of relief in southern Tasmania today with no new COVID cases detected on the first full day of lockdown. More than 1,400 tests were processed overnight. That's a state record. The snap restrictions are in place until at least Monday after an infected man escaped hotel quarantine in Hobart. $140 million worth of heroin has been uncovered at the Port of Melbourne in a shipment of tiles, Australia's biggest onshore heroin bust. A Malaysian national is facing life in prison for the record-breaking haul. Crime reporter Lana Murphy.
This man is accused of importing enough heroin into the country to kill 225 people. But federal officers say the Malaysian national never saw police coming.
Obviously, he was surprised when we turned up and arrested him.
The 38-year-old was allegedly caught moving what he thought was the 451-kilogram haul, smuggled inside boxes of ceramic tiles. But Border Force had got there first.
This is about a grand piano's worth of heroin. There are very few ways in which you can get this sort of quantity of heroin over the border.
The sea shipment arrived in Melbourne from Malaysia on September 29, an X-ray uncovering packets of heroin inside. Police watched as the consignment was taken to Tullamarine, then delivered to a warehouse in Pascoe Vale South, arresting the 38-year-old visa holder there on Thursday. Police allege he travelled to Victoria solely to import the $140 million haul.
These drug syndicates don't care about the health of our community. All they care about is making their money.
Australia's border closure has made the drug trade here more lucrative than ever, and traffickers are trying to capitalise on that by using shipping containers and airmail. They've tried to move more drugs into the country this year than any time before the pandemic.
It means more's coming in. We are detecting more.
There have been 620 heroin detections this year, up 250% on 2020. Seizures of precursor chemicals have jumped 360%, while there's been double the amount of ice found and almost 240% more cannabis. 3 other properties were raided yesterday. More arrests are expected. Lana Murphy, 9 News.
A British MP has been murdered while meeting with constituents in Essex, police declaring it an act of terror. As Carrie-Anne Greenbank tells us, the father of 5 was repeatedly stabbed inside a church.
A life of service cut short in a senseless killing. British Conservative MP Sir David Amos had been meeting with voters at a church in Essex when he was attacked. Stabbed multiple times, paramedics fought to save his life, but the 69-year-old died before he could be taken to hospital. Police arrived in minutes, immediately arrested a 25-year-old man and recovered a knife.
And today he was simply dispensing his duties when his life was horrifically cut short.
The father of 5's death is being felt deeply across both sides of politics. Sir David Amos was one of Britain's longest-serving parliamentarians, a backbencher for 38 years.
He was one of the kindest, nicest, most gentle people in politics. I think everybody was deeply shocked and heart-stricken.
Sadly, the UK has been here before. In 2016, Labor MP Jo Cox was shot and stabbed to death ahead of a meeting with voters in her constituency. In 2010, politician Stephen Timms survived being stabbed in the stomach. And in 2000, MP Nigel Jones was severely injured in a sword attack. A colleague who came to his aid was killed.
It's really important that we get good people in public life, but this is the risk that we're all taking. You know, and so many MPs today will be scared by this.
Sir David Amos strongly believed the public should have easy access to politicians, recently writing that an increase in attacks could ruin that age-old British tradition. Now his death has reignited the debate over security measures for MPs.
We do have to re-examine the security given to our politicians, but we can't lose what is precious about a democracy.
Flags lowered to half-mast at Westminster on a dark day for democracy.
And Carrie-Anne is in Essex. Carrie, the MP had been campaigning against this type of violence.
Well, he had, Alicia, that's right. In the months leading up to this stabbing, Sir David had stood in the UK Parliament and raised the issue of knife violence. He'd asked Boris Johnson what could be done to stop the senseless killings. Now his death has prompted an urgent review into security measures for MPs. After Jo Cox's murder, panic buttons were issued to MPs, along with, in some cases, bulletproof glass. Police are now analysing what more could be done. Alicia?
All right, Carrie-Anne Greenbank there, thank you. Well, it's crunch time for the Nationals, who will have their say tomorrow on a plan to reach net zero emissions by 2050. The Prime Minister's decision to attend global climate talks have increased pressure inside the coalition for an agreement in the next fortnight.
Well, the Prime Minister's going to Glasgow, and that's a very clear sign of our intent and our commitment to doing our part.
The Nationals will meet tomorrow to examine the new climate policy for the first time. All right, joining me now with look ahead to tonight's sport is Corey Norris.
Thank you, Alicia. Good evening. Tonight, Peter Moody is the toast of Caulfield as his Wonder Boy tears up the track for a major breakthrough.
And it's Centervise. What a star. Won the Caulfield Cup.
Trained a couple of thousand winners here, but never this one, so it was very important to win it.
While in Sydney, it was third time lucky for a star sprinter, which claimed the world's richest race. The Gunteen, who's already preparing for life as a Roo, and DJ finds his tune in Dubai with Chennai, the kings of the IPL. That's all coming up later in Sport, Alicia.
All right, Corey, we look forward to it. See you soon. Melbourne house prices could tumble after the biggest boom in decades. A key indicator has economists seeing red. Chris Kohler explains next. Plus, a bombing kills dozens of worshippers during Friday prayers. And tourism erupts thanks to Iceland's hottest new attraction.
COVID and kids, they're burning questions.
Can I get COVID? Do I have to wear a mask at school? What symptoms would I get?
In a 9 News special event,
Is it safe to go back to school?
our team of experts answer your biggest fears.
What is long COVID? Will I get the vaccine?
Everything your family needs to know as kids return to school.
I forgot the question.
9 News, Monday at 6.
After gaining more than 20% in a year, house prices are tipped to fall. New economic forecasts now see major markets hitting a peak that won't be sustained as a key barometer flashes red. More from Chris Kohler.
It's been the biggest price boom in decades, but it's leaving behind an even bigger problem.
I think it's pretty unfair on the younger generation.
First home buyers priced out after a 20% surge in just 1 year.
It's made it harder for people like us, I guess.
But a price fall is on the horizon as economists raise the alarm. One of the most important market indicators is flashing red.
We've been running this survey since the mid-70s, and this index has picked every major turning point in the Australian housing market.
The survey question is simple. Is now a good or a bad time to buy a home? The number of people answering yes has been declining for almost a year, and this month it collapsed by 14%.
The answer is pretty much no at the moment. Outside of the pandemic shock in April last year, that's the lowest monthly read we've seen since the GFC.
People are right to be concerned, according to economists, who say the market is on unsteady ground. Why? First, lost affordability is knocking a large chunk of buyers out. Tighter lending rules are being introduced, meaning less money will flow into the market. And Westpac predicts the RBA will hike interest rates sooner than expected. All that means prices will go from a 22% jump this year to just 8% next year, and then a fall will begin, starting with a 5% drop in 2023.
The cycle's been a very strong run, but it looks like we're nearing the end of the price side of things.
Houses might be a long way from becoming cheap, but within a year, Australia's runaway market could stall. Chris Kohler, 9 News.
Dozens of worshippers have died after a suicide blast at an Afghan mosque. Multiple explosions rocked the northern city of Kandahar, killing at least 47 people. Last week, dozens of Shiite worshippers were killed during Friday prayers, also in the country's north. Islamic State has claimed responsibility. Well, tourism is big money in Iceland, and with the industry decimated by COVID, its resurgence is coming from an unlikely source, an erupting volcano. The spectacular site is luring in visitors, and there are predictions it could continue for another 100 years. More from Karianne Greenbank.
From the moment the Fagradalsfjord volcano roared to life in March this year, the red-hot spectacle reignited Iceland's dormant tourism industry and redirected the nation's search and rescue crews.
Usually in other countries you see people running away from a volcano. In Iceland everybody runs towards the volcano.
For months the country's renowned volunteer rescuers have been crisscrossing the volcano's unforgiving terrain, keeping careful watch over visitors.
We've seen a few people trying to walk on the lava. Not a very good idea. You either end up well done or medium rare.
The crews test for dangerous carbon monoxide levels in valleys of fresh lava like this one. Here, the molten lava is 40 metres deep. Its thin black crust disguising a liquid magma lake underneath.
There's a lot of carbon monoxide being released, and we shouldn't stay too long here because it's nasty stuff.
The timing of the eruption couldn't have been better for the pandemic-battered tourism industry. The slow-moving lava hasn't endangered any population centres and presents a rare opportunity to lure sightseers back.
We've seen all kinds of things, both from Icelanders and from tourists. People have been roasting marshmallows and over the lava and grilling hot dogs. People have hiked up here to be wed and take their wedding photos.
From family selfies to mountaintop picnics, the steaming crater's putting on a show for its spectators, still randomly spewing lava, and the first volcano to erupt here in 800 years isn't done yet. Hundreds of thousands of people have now made this trek up the volcano, and as far as tourist attractions go, it's a constantly changing site, with new lava transforming the landscape almost every day. Seismologists say the primordial forces at play are more powerful than first thought.
The magma is coming from quite deep. It's coming from where the mantle and the crust meet.
They now think the eruption and the 50,000 earthquakes that came before it may have just reawakened the Reykjanes Peninsula.
We are maybe stepping into a period where the volcanic systems follow each other, and that might last century, 2 centuries in total.
Ensuring the land of fire and ice stays on the map for decades to come. In Iceland, Kari-Ann Greenbank, 9 News.
Amazing sight, isn't it? All right, Madeline Slattery is here now with a look at the weather for us, and it was a pretty wet start to the weekend, Maddie.
That's right, it sure was, Alicia. Melbourne was absolutely soaked overnight, and we were left with grey and gusty conditions today. From a low of 11 degrees, the city reached 16 this afternoon. The radar shows the significant area of rain that moved over central and eastern districts late last night and into this morning before easing back today. Eastern suburbs were hit the hardest. Ferny Creek collected 64 millimetres, almost matching the monthly average total in one night. And that's the heaviest rain seen in that catchment since June. 39 millimetres fell at Coldstream and at Frankston, 38 at Scoresby. Moorabbin recorded 27 millimetres and the city 26. We won't be seeing rainfall totals quite like that in the week ahead, but we do have a mix of conditions in the forecast, and I'll have those details a little later, Alicia.
All right, Maddie, we'll see you very soon. Well, hundreds of seasonal workers from the Pacific Islands are now on Victorian farms, but there are fears we're falling well short. The Melbourne Museum keeping family memories alive for generations to come. And a city council tells its resident wizard to have a spell. Wild weather has caused chaos in Caulfield, causing a tree to collapse on power lines. Crews had to brave torrid conditions to remove the tree at 11 o'clock last night. The SES says it received 421 calls for help in the 24 hours to this afternoon. The busiest units were Lilydale and Emerald. An asparagus farm southeast of Melbourne has welcomed 200 seasonal workers from the Pacific Islands as part of an agreement to get pickers back on farms. But as Elizabeth Moss explains, some say it's just a fraction of the workforce required.
Ready for harvest, thousands of asparagus plants are picked and sorted for packing. It's tiresome work for 200 staff from the Pacific Islands working for Momac Produce.
Just to get some money from Australia to help our families back at home.
Tom and his colleagues are among the first 1,500 seasonal workers from the island nations to arrive in Victoria via quarantine in Tasmania. It's meant things at Kuwi-Rup are already looking greener compared to last season.
We only had 40% of our workers here, so it was very, very hard to manage.
We missed out on a lot of produce and a lot of kilos and tonnes of asparagus that should have been harvested last year.
The arrangement was part of a Commonwealth scheme to ensure farms had all the staff they need despite international border closures. And more help is on the way.
93 workers from the Solomon Islands have arrived in Tasmania as part of the second tranche of our agreement.
But there are concerns that's not enough. Some warn crops are again at risk of going to waste.
A single orchardist would be able to take all those workers in one go. It is a fraction of what's needed by the industry.
There is still plenty of farms and other seasons with different sort of products out there that are desperate to get access to workers like we have.
Despite the strong reliance on overseas workers, there are financial incentives to encourage Aussies to lend a hand. Some businesses paying around $28 an hour for those willing to put in a hard day's work. At least for these workers, the proof is in the picking.
It changed my life and my family's life.
Elizabeth Moss, 9 News.
Joe Biden says Bill Clinton is doing fine as he recovers in hospital. Wife Hillary visiting her husband, who's being treated for sepsis in California. President Biden says he spoke to Mr Clinton on the phone, adding he's due to be released shortly. Christchurch's official wizard will soon cast his final spell after he was sacked from the council-paid role. Ian Brackenbury Channel had been collecting a $15,000 annual salary for providing acts of wizardry and promoting the city since his appointment almost 4 decades ago. The 88-year-old, who holds a driver's licence under the name The Wizard, says he'll continue his quest for free. Well, from Super 8 cameras to camcorders and beyond, we've been making home movies for decades. Now those amateur filmmakers are being celebrated, with a Melbourne museum digitising hundreds of hours worth of vintage footage. Madeline Slattery has more.
They might be a little grainy by today's standards, but to Karen Corrie, these videos are absolute perfection.
You just get a big smile on your face and have a bit of a laugh because it's just so gorgeous, to be quite honest, to look back.
They show a snippet of her family life growing up in the 60s.
Birthdays. Definitely anyone's birthday it would come out for, balloons or cakes.
The footage was captured on this camera, her dad often the one behind the lens.
My mum actually bought the camera, and from then on I think they used it for the next 20, 30 years.
The keepsakes have been donated to Melbourne's ACME, which has received more than 300 hours of amateur footage captured by families over the decades.
You see that really intimate play between filmmaker and subject.
For World Home Movie Day, ACME would have loved to open its doors to its preservation lab, where conservators work to digitise old footage. Instead, you can watch their work online, a process that reveals some quirky surprises.
A couple of centimetres more on either side to get more extra film. Extra people just popped into the film.
And these days, with technology always at our fingertips, it's almost second nature to snap videos. But if you're not diligent, they're also quite likely to go missing.
Unlike videos which might have been put away in the cupboard, those digital stories are often lost because they're only saved on the device that they were made with.
Madeline Slattery, 9 News.
Australia's oldest wooden tall ship has returned to the Yarra, the passion project that took 80,000 volunteer hours. That's next. Little Harry having a go with the help of one of his cricket heroes, and the Richmond fixer-upper, which sold for well over $1 million. All right, time to check in now on the day's real estate results for you. And as always, Chris Kohler joins me in the studio. Chris, how has the market performed this weekend?
Well, Alicia, we've seen another lift in the numbers. 488 homes are reported to have sold, according to Domain, which is part owned by Nine, and the clearance rate is at 75%. And the most expensive sale, I should say, of the day was just shy of $3 million for 7 Walter Street in South Yarra. That works out to be $1 million a bedroom, which was right in the middle of the price guide. And the most affordable sale was for a unit on Melbourne Street in Murrumbina, which sold prior to the auction for $315,000. There was another pretty unbelievable sale during the week. This home on Coppin Street, Richmond, went for $1.4 million. It's unchanged since it last sold in 1976. Back then, the price was $30,000. So that $1.4 million is obviously just a starting point because it's going to be knocked down and used as a very expensive blank canvas, Alicia.
Tidy little earner, isn't it? All right, Chris, thank you very much for that. Well, Australia's oldest surviving wooden tall ship has sailed into docklands with a little help after years of restoration. When it's complete, the Alma Dopel will be the district's newest, oldest tourist attraction. Justine Conway was there to greet her.
Sailing into a locked-down city, it wasn't the grandest reception for this grand old dame.
The weather was so bad this morning, we weren't sure what was going to happen, but there's a lot of excitement.
For the hundreds of volunteers who've spent 8 painstaking years restoring the Alma Dopel, seeing the hull back in the water was a moment to celebrate.
No ship is a ship. They're
They're a living, breathing being.
It is more than a ship. For many people, it's a way of life.
If you happen to be driving over the Balti Bridge this afternoon, you might have caught a glimpse as she was carefully guided into port at Victoria Harbour. Built 119 years ago, Australia's oldest surviving wooden tall ship is partway through a restoration that will see her live to sail for another 100 years.
It was built in 1903 to carry general cargo and timber, and in particular, and supplies for the town, which she then did for the next 70 years.
She continued to work in retirement. Between 1988 through to the late 90s, the ship was repurposed as a training vessel for a youth development program.
Teaching young people about themselves and leadership and, things that combat, depression, youth suicide.
Today, Matt McDonald is master of the ship. 25 years ago, he took part in the program, where young people sail on a 9-day adventure.
Taught me a lot about how to work with others and teamwork and leadership when I was a teenager.
Sometimes we call it the voyage of a lifetime.
When the restoration's complete, that good work will continue and young people will once again have the chance to set sail. And when the day is done, the Alma Dopal will come back to port here in Victoria Harbour, where it's hoped she'll draw more tourists to Docklands.
Tall ships of any type are always a magnet, but this particular ship, because of its history and its connection with the land and with some of the early settlements, is a very special ship to have.
Justine Conway, 9 News.
Well, Melbourne children starved of activity are counting the days until they can return to community sport. Among them, 8-year-old Harry Mitten, who's received a special welcome back message from one of his cricket heroes. Clint Stanaway with the story.
A summer in Australia wouldn't be the same without cricket. And having missed out on so much sport recently, little legends like Harry Mitten can't wait to pick up a bat again.
Sometimes I go to the park with my friends, just playing for a little bit.
Now 8, Harry was born without his lower left arm. Not that that's ever stopped him from having a crack.
He saw the other kids playing and he's like, oh, I can do that. He's certainly not treated any differently. He just gets out there and bowls and fields and bats.
Like so many other children across Melbourne, Harry and his brother are like coiled springs. At this stage, community sport is penciled in to resume once we reach 80% double-dose vaccinations in early November. It can't come soon enough.
He misses it a lot. I mean, he loves it. He loves the camaraderie.
To be rolled out again this summer, the Cricket Blast program is perfect for junior stars like Harry.
We should be able to get out there and get the kids moving, hopefully like never before.
Australia's biggest names have thrown their support behind the campaign.
I always remember the first game of junior cricket season was always the highlight of the year.
And from the Middle East, ahead of the T20 World Cup, Glenn Maxwell had a little surprise prepared.
I heard about your story and how you've been playing cricket and wanted to reach out to say hello. I hope you're really excited about the cricket season starting soon. It'll be great to play cricket again, but also hang out with your mates. Remember, keep doing what you love and have fun with your cricket. Be it in the backyard with your brother Toby or with your friends Perry and Archer at Druids. Good luck for the season ahead. I hope you have an awesome time. Cheers.
A shout out that clearly meant the world to Harry. While priming himself for a big summer at the crease, he too has some words of wisdom for anybody keen to give cricket a crack post-lockdown.
We hope you have fun on sport. Don't give up.
Clint Stanaway, 9 News.
Beautiful words there from Harry, what a legend. Well, now returning with sport, here is Corey Norris.
Thank you, Alicia. After the break, gun trainer Peter Moody eyes off the Melbourne Cup after his superstar tore up Caulfield in stunning fashion. Party time in Sydney as a sprinter conquers Everest. Tagoe heads to the States to get in shape, and Josh's perfect tune-up for the World Cup. Champion trainer Peter Moody has claimed some elusive silverware, securing his maiden Caulfield Cup victory. Incentivised Storm to a 9th straight win to further cement favouritism for the Melbourne Cup. Here's Braden Ingram.
4 kilos lighter following a week of hard dieting, Damien Oliver had his game face on, as did the raging favourite, Incentivise.
Stand by for a start, and they're racing in the Caulfield Cup.
Jumping from the widest barrier, Brett Preble was aggressive from the get-go.
Delphi's up there early with also Incentivise, who's 5 and 6 deep.
Ollie took Delphi to the lead on the back straight, before his main rival threw down the gauntlet at the 800.
Incentivise hooks out 3 wide and is about to push the button.
Any fears he'd gone early were quickly demolished. This was confirmation of a champion.
But Incentivise is coming away, 4 lengths in front, and Incentivise, what a star, won the Caulfield Cup from nonconformist.
The victory returned $2.40 ahead of nonconformist and Persan. The gigantic win giving cause for a gigantic celebration. The triumphant owners unable to contain themselves. As for Peter Moody, his long wait was over.
It's unbelievable. Caulfield was my home for probably 16 or 17 years and trained a couple of thousand winners here, but never this one, so it was very important to win it.
Before sharing the love.
Yeah, thank you, Pete. Mate, that was special.
Already enjoying an impressive spring, the veteran hoop now has his eyes on the biggest prize of all.
And all that's telling me is, look out Melbourne Cup.
Yeah, 2 miles,
Yeah, no,
bring it on.
He's going to eat it. He's going to eat the 32. He's exciting. He's probably one of the most exciting horses I've ridden.
Incentivise crunched into $2.50 for the Cup. Unfortunately, there was some sad racing news today. Last year's Cox Plate winner, Sir Dragonet, was completing track work at Moonee Valley this morning in preparation for that Cox Plate defence. He hadn't even worked up to full pace when he sustained an injury and broke down during that track work, and he was sadly euthanised on course, and certainly it was difficult to deal with for his trainer, Kieran Maher.
He said whether he'd put his foot down a bit funny or, he just sustained a catastrophic injury to his near foreleg, and so it's pretty hard pill to swallow.
So just repeating last year's Cox Plate champion Sir Dragonet breaking down at track work this morning. Corey, certainly difficult for all involved.
Yeah, sad news. Thank you, Braden. Well, a 10,000 strong crowd has been treated to a special win from Nature Strip in the $15 million Everest. With restrictions lifted in Sydney, the punters were in full voice as James McDonald guided the favourite to victory in the world's richest turf race.
Nature Strip in front of Eduardo. Nature Strip kept going. Eduardo. Mars Crusader's jumping out of the ground. Just missed. Nature Strip clings on.
It made for wild scenes of celebration and a few tears for both jockey and trainer.
Getting a little bit emotional for a change. So just a great race. It's just captured the imagination of so many people.
It was Waller's second Everest triumph. Well, exciting teenager Jason Horne-Francis has boldly declared he's ready to handle the pressure of being the AFL's #1 draft pick. The South Australian admitting he's already considered what life might be like at North Melbourne. Ayrton Woolley reports.
Meet Jason Horne-Francis, the teenager who dreams of being #1.
Yeah, at the start it was just trying to get my foot in the door and get me drafted, and then obviously getting my name out there a bit. I think for a bit of a goal for me was to try to go #1, so I feel like for me it would be good.
The South Australian was today front and centre at the draft combine in Adelaide. After a dominant year in the SANFL, he's now all but certain to be selected by North Melbourne, a move he's already planning for.
It's hard not to, and there's a lot of media stuff about it. Look, they've spoken to me and said that.
Such is his potential, the Roos fielded monster offers for the #1 pick from both Adelaide and Richmond.
It's a bit crazy, but I feel like I can make an impact straight away, as in I've had that 2 years of league footy under my belt, and it's really helped me.
Meanwhile, in the US, Jordan De Goey has been hard at work.
18.
After question marks over his fitness last pre-season, the Magpies star has been getting a head start on the summer ahead, having taken up a promotional opportunity.
2.
And Bulldog favourite Bob Murphy is adjusting to his new colours.
It's a pretty big change. Lavender's calming, and so this is a calm time of year, and soon it'll be a flaming sort of purple.
Ready to tackle a role in football operations at Fremantle, the move west is making for some welcome adjustment.
It is nice to, especially for the kids. I've got 3 little ones that, just for them to sort of have a sense of freedom and adventure again.
Ayrton Woolley, 9 News.
Australian quick Josh Hazlewood has played a key role in helping the Chennai Super Kings to claim the IPL title. Hazlewood finished with 2 for 29 off his 4 overs, an ideal tune-up for next week's World Cup.
I guess it's been perfect preparation really to play on these wickets and on these grounds against some high quality opposition, so I'm looking forward to it.
It was Chennai's 4th trophy, and DJ Dwayne Bravo got the party started.
Yeah, the Chennai boys making all the
noise everywhere we go.
He's got every reason to be happy. It was his 16th T20 title. And Adam Scott has found form at the CJ Cup in Las Vegas. The Aussie veteran is in a tie for second, 5 shots back after carding 4 birdies and 2 eagles in his final 7 holes.
For a 7th straight 3 on the card to close out his second round. That is remarkable. Yeah.
But the shot of the day belonged to Mexican Abraham Ancer, who made a rare albatross on the par 5 14th, crunching his approach 230 metres and straight into the cup. Nicely done. That's our sport.
Very nice indeed. All right, Corey, thanks so much for that. Maddie returns now, and is tomorrow looking any calmer, Maddie?
It is, Alicia. The second half of the weekend is going to be much calmer and sunnier as well. And after a few wet days, we have some more settled conditions to look forward to in the forecast. I'll have all those details next. Hello again, and after some very heavy rain overnight, we were left with a mostly dry but windy day. From a low of 11 degrees, the city reached 16 this afternoon. Southwesterlies kept temperatures well below average today. Ferny Creek only got to 10 degrees. The bulk of the showers cleared this morning after a deluge overnight, and Ferny Creek collected 64 millimetres by 9 a.m. Coldstream and Frankston recorded 39. Today, falls have been scattered and very light around the city and suburbs, but it's been quite gusty for much of the day. 82 kilometres an hour was recorded across the bay early this morning. Wilson's Prom recorded the strongest gust in the state, 130 kilometres an hour there, and Mount William clocked 91. And those cool winds stopped the temperature from climbing very high in the state's south. Kilmore and Ballarat only reached 13 degrees. It was warmer through the North Mildura, climbed to 21. And as showers cleared out of the state's east, falls have been mostly concentrated in those districts. Mallacoota has collected 7 millimetres since 9 a.m. The complex low pressure system that brought the damaging conditions last night has now moved out to sea, and a high is approaching us from the west. It's due to take over tomorrow. That high will move across Victoria and New South Wales, delivering dry and settled conditions. Clearer skies will make for a colder night around the state, with widespread minimums in single digits, and inland spots could see patchy morning fog. Southern areas can expect the odd isolated shower, but the rest of the state should stay mostly dry. Maximums will generally be in the high teens through the south and low 20s through the north. Mildura is forecast to reach 25 degrees. Most suburbs will drop to 7, 8 and 9 degrees overnight, 10 degrees in Frankston, and there could be some early morning fog for outer suburbs. Then most spots will reach 18 or 19 under partly cloudy skies. The chance of morning showers for southeast suburbs, but they won't make much of an impact. Less than a millimetre is expected to fall, and westerly winds will be much lighter than today. From a low of 9 degrees, the city is heading for 19 under partly cloudy skies. 19 again on Monday with a shower or two and the chance of a thunderstorm for outer northern and eastern suburbs. 18 on Tuesday and a possible light shower. Then the temperature jumps up to a sunny 24 degrees on Wednesday. A mild night, only down to 13 degrees before a top of 24 again on Thursday. A shower or two developing though, most likely later in the day up to 3 millimetres. Heavier showers on Friday and 20 degrees, and those showers will continue into Saturday down to 16. But it will be a few degrees warmer than that tomorrow. After a low of 9, the city is expected to reach 19. Partly cloudy skies and gentle winds should make for a pretty pleasant day. And then there's something for everyone in the week ahead, Alicia.
Yeah, looks amazing. All right, Maddie, thank you very much for that. And that is 9 News this Saturday. Deb Knight is up next with the current affair. We'll leave you with